Headlines: Korea's new finance minister vows an expansionary policy, whether it's fiscal or monetary, for as long as the economy needs it. Students who survived the April ferry disaster testify against 15 crew members facing charges from homicide to negligence. The UN Security Council holds an emergency meeting and calls for an immediate and unconditional humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, with more than 1,000 people killed in the conflict. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Thanks for tuning in. Korea's finance minister says aggressive fiscal and monetary policy will be critical through at least next year to prop up Korea's ailing domestic economy. And as part of his vision, he emphasized the importance of breathing life into Korea's real estate market. Park Geunhye has the details.
Korea's new finance minister Park Geunhye is strongly pushing ahead with its goal to boost the nation's flagging economy. During a television debate with journalists on Monday, Choi said the government will seek aggressive economic policies for as long as they're needed.
Whether it's fiscal or monetary, we need an expansionary policy for the time being. I'm not just talking about the second half of this year. The policies should continue at least until through next year and could continue on beyond that, if necessary.
Che added that the government and the nation's central bank share the same view over the current economic situation. He said that both parties have agreed on running an expansionary policy, further raising expectations of a rate cut next month.
The Korean economy is suffering from poor conditions, so the Bank of Korea will countermeasure such risks with its monetary policy.
Che said, however, that he's skeptical about lowering the key rate too much, like in the United States or Japan, where interest rates remain near zero as their economic situations are different. The finance minister also described the current real estate market as being in a cold period and reiterated the importance of normalizing the housing market. Park Geunhye, ARIRANG News.
And the Park Geunhye effect and hopes over his stimulus package have sent the country's benchmark Kospi index soaring, hitting yet another fresh high for the year. Kim Ji-yeon has details.
Monday was another record-breaking day for the nation's benchmark index. After surpassing the 2,050 mark at one point in midday trading, the Kospi settled in at 2,048 points, picking up its biggest gains in nearly 9 months. Kim Young-yeol, an analyst at Seoul-based Kyobo Securities Company, says the impact of economic plans laid out by the country's new finance minister have played an important part in the record-breaking gain.
The local stock market is reflecting on Che's economic plan, which shows the government's willingness to breathe life into the Korean economy. The main difference between the new economic team and the previous one, led by Hyun Oh-seok, is that other government departments, such as the Ministry of Strategy and Finance and the Bank of Korea, are on the same page with Che on what kinds of policies should be made in order to diagnose the Korean economy.
Last Thursday, the nation's new economic team, led by Finance Minister Park Geunhye, unveiled a $40 billion stimulus plan to spur growth by inducing spending and promoting corporate activity. Although the new finance minister has left the issue of setting the country's interest rate to the Bank of Korea, Che said he expects the monetary authority will make decisions to counter the economic downturn. Meanwhile, Kang Yeon-chul, an analyst at Seoul-based Uri Investment and Security, says the country's rising exports played a big part in the Kospi surge.
Exports this year have reached all-time highs, and company performance has also improved compared to last year. Exports to the U.S. and Europe steadily rose, and exports to China are expected to rise during the July and August period this year.
Korea logged a trade surplus for the 29th straight month in June, as exports amounted to $47.8 billion last month, up 2.5% from a year earlier. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
South Korea's defense ministry says North Korea doesn't appear to have the technology to develop electromagnetic pulse bombs. This is contrary to recent comments by a former U.S. intelligence chief, James Woolsey, who said last week that Russia helped North Korea develop the weapons back in 2004. An EMP bomb is made to detonate high in the atmosphere and release an electromagnetic pulse that can damage electronic devices and communication networks on the ground. A high-level U.S. official is due in Korea this week to discuss targeted sanctions. Peter Harrell, the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, is scheduled for talks with Korean officials on Tuesday to stress the importance of international coordination to punish Russia. Moscow has been assisting pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine who have been accused of downing Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 earlier this month. It's also expected the American official will bring his South Korean counterparts up to speed on international negotiations aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear program. This next report coming from Korea's by-elections campaign trail. The ruling party is working hard to shake off the April ferry disaster and highlight new economic stimulus and growth story, while the opposition parties found a new angle in the ferry disaster to criticize the government for. Kim Young-gil has more.
The July 30th polls carry extra weight because 15 parliamentary seats are up for grabs, the largest total ever for a by-election. The stakes are perhaps greatest in this Seoul and Suwon constituencies, which are considered strategically important as barometers of public sentiment. Candidates of the ruling Saenuri Party have made economic recovery their main platform. They've been touting their party's connection to President Park Geunhye and promising reforms.
There are two choices in this election. Elect our candidates who will bring about economic development for their electoral regions, or their candidates who are mired in collusive practices and old politics.
The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has also gone on the offensive, deeming the by-election a chance to prompt change.
We must provide a warning to the ruling Saenuri Party in the presidential office so that the government brings about changes.
The main opposition party has been hammering on the government's failure to arrest Yu Byung-an, the de facto owner of the Seoul ferry, which sunk in April, killing 304 people. To make them more competitive in races against their conservative rivals, the opposition recently unified campaigns in specific constituencies behind one candidate. The by-election comes less than 2 months after local elections in June, which neither the ruling nor the main opposition party claimed victory. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Prosecutors are seeking arrest warrants for Yoo Dae-gyun, the eldest son of Yu Byung-an, whose family's corrupt business is suspected to have led to the April ferry disaster. The son was arrested last Friday along with 34-year-old Park Soo-kyung, who allegedly helped him evade capture. Both had been on the police's wanted list since the sinking of the ferry in April that took the lives of more than 300 people. Prosecutors are looking to detain Mr. Hugh for questioning regarding his alleged embezzlement of about $9.6 million from the ferry operator and its affiliates. And staying with the ferry disaster, 6 surviving students were in court today giving testimony in a trial against the ferry's crew members. The students said many more would have survived that morning if the crew and the Coast Guard had taken proper measures. Yoo Dien tells us more.
A ferry with about 300 passengers, most of them students, is sinking fast. But instead of staging full-out rescue efforts, their crew members are nowhere to be seen, and the Coast Guard is watching from afar. This was the testimony given by 6 survivors of April's Seoul ferry disaster, who are students of Danwon High School. Speaking in a court hearing Monday afternoon, the 6 gave a chronological account of the event from the time of the accident. One said that about 30 students were lined up for the emergency exit, but when the rescue team didn't arrive, each student began jumping into the water. As soon as she did, the student says in a shaky voice that the wave suddenly crashed up against the emergency exit where 10 of her friends had been waiting. They were unable to escape. Another surviving student also said that the Seoul crew were nowhere to be seen for the entirety of her escape. She testified that the Coast Guard was within an arm's reach of the emergency exit, but only lifted out the people who fell into the water. She said she told them a lot more of her friends were just inside the emergency exit, but the Coast Guard only watched as the ship continued to list. Most students told judges that there were repeated announcements instructing passengers to stay where they were. If they had received instructions to escape, the 6 students said many more could have survived. The students ended their testimonies by asking the panel of judges to punish the crewmen to the strictest letter of the law. Seoul ferry captain Lee Jun-seok and 3 of his fellow crew are currently on trial for charges of homicide by willful negligence. None were present at Monday's court hearing. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to. With a slow property market in China, Chinese firms flush with cash are going overseas company shopping. And Korea is no exception when it comes to China's aggressive M&A moves. Song Ji-sun reports.
Chinese companies are busy buying up overseas companies with their huge cash reserves. According to Bloomberg on Monday, Chinese firms spent some $44 billion on global merger and acquisition deals this year, up nearly 40% from a year earlier. Chinese investors have traditionally invested in the domestic real estate market, but with profits eroding amid slowing growth, many are turning to foreign firms for higher gains. And Korea, a close neighbor and home to many advanced IT technologies, is one of the major go-to places for China's investors. Chinese corporate mergers and acquisitions of Korean firms have jumped 27-fold to $661 million this year compared to the same period last year. So what's behind the spike? Well, it's mainly because Asia's biggest internet company, China's Tencent, spent some $500 million buying a 28% share in Korea's CJ Games as it looks to bolster its lineup of online and mobile entertainment. China's IT giants like Tencent, along with Alibaba and Baidu, are fiercely investing in Korean game developers to acquire the skills to invent hit mobile games. On the other hand, Korean firms' investment in Chinese firms through M&A stands at a mere $20 million this year, 1/5 of the volume recorded last year. This is raising concerns Korean firms may lose their own shares while the Chinese aggressively acquire Korean stakes. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
A survey shows many Korean startups are mom-and-pop stores, meaning not necessarily creating jobs and promoting innovation. According to Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 2013, they accounted for 37% of all startups in Korea last year. That's the highest percentage among the 26 countries surveyed. This clearly contrasts with countries like Norway and Switzerland, where the proportion is less than 8%. Korea's financial authorities have announced ways to make it easier for foreigners in Korea to shop online. They're lifting the 300,000 won or $290 limit on online authentication system and allowing multiple payment technologies. The authentication system was designed to enhance cybersecurity, but did cause a major inconvenience for shoppers. So the changes could go into effect as soon as early next month. The number of smartphone users around the world is expected to reach 2.5 billion by the end of next year. Market researcher Strategy Analytics says about 35% of the global population of approximately 7.2 billion will use smartphones next year. That means more than 3 in every 10 people will be smartphone users. We're at the height of the summer vacation season here in Korea, a time when millions of Koreans take a few days off to recharge. President Park Geunhye is also taking a vacation this week, although her getaway spot will not be anywhere else but the presidential office of Cheongwade in Seoul. Officials say she will have a very quiet vacation this time around, considering the country is still mourning the victims of April's ferry disaster. The president is expected to continue working on ways to revitalize the economy and decide on who to nominate for the vacant culture minister post. On the cultural front, a special photo exhibition about Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo opened this Monday. It's the work of celebrated photographer Kim Jung-man, who has made the island his subject every season over the last 2 years. Park Ji-won tells us more.
From its breathtaking sunrises and the East Sea that surrounds it, to flocks of seagulls and the moon hovering above the horizon, this photo exhibition shows the many faces of Dokdo that may be foreign to those who haven't had the pleasure of visiting. Korea's celebrated photographer Kim Jung-man visited Korea's easternmost territory several times over the course of 2 years to capture the beauty of the island day and night at every season.
It is a great honor for a Korean photographer to be able to shoot the very place that represents the Korean spirit. This beautiful and sometimes lonely place has inherited various artistic meanings as well, with some literary and historical connotations.
Kim shot more than 20,000 photos, but settled on 55 works that depict the mysterious and humble island. All the photos will be donated to the Northeast Asian History Foundation, which first came up with the idea of the Dokdo exhibition.
People can now freely visit Dokdo, but they usually don't stay long enough to appreciate the diversity of the island. We'd like to show audiences various beautiful images of the islets.
The foundation hopes the exhibition helps to counter Japan's false claims to the island, an island that is not only Korean land, but also part of the Korean spirit. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
The 3 weeks of fresh violence in Gaza is showing no signs of letting up, with both Hamas and Israel firing attack on each other despite ceasefire proclamations. For more, our Kim Hyun-bin is joining us from the news center. So Hyun-bin, is there any hope of a possible truce at this point?
Well, over 1,000 people, mostly civilians, have been killed since this conflict began. And of course, to bring a halt to the bloodshed, the UN Security Council has wrapped up an emergency meeting on the growing crisis and called on all parties to lay down their weapons. Our Connie Lee reports.
The UN Security Council has called for an immediate and unconditional humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza to allow for the delivery of urgently needed assistance. The statement comes after an emergency meeting early Monday as military operations resumed in the Gaza Strip despite calls for a truce. Israeli tanks and soldiers are still positioned along the Israeli-Gaza border as talks over a temporary ceasefire broke down. The 24-hour humanitarian truce proposed by Hamas early Sunday to mark the end of the Islamic Ramadan holiday was over by the afternoon, with both sides exchanging fire. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu questioned the validity of the Hamas truce and said his country was not going to let a terrorist organization decide when it's convenient to fire at our cities, at our people, and when it's not. International pressure is on for both parties to resolve the conflict. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon spent last week in the Middle East seeking a peaceful end to the violence. U.S. President Barack Obama also spoke with Netanyahu by phone, calling for an immediate ceasefire. Since the conflict flared up on July 8th, more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed, mostly civilians, including many women and children. It's a scene of massive destruction, as piles of rubble and debris are seen all around the Gaza Strip, as the conflict shows no sign of letting up. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And Hyunbin, there was a new report that Hamas militants bought rockets from North Korea in a secret arms deal worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This as the Islamist group needs to top off its weapons arsenal after thousands of missiles were either launched at Israel or destroyed in strikes in recent weeks. So do tell us more.
You're right, Chetty. Thousands of rockets have been fired since the latest conflict between Israel and Hamas erupted on July 8th. And the Islamist group is reportedly in urgent need to replenish its depleted stockpiles. According to British daily The Telegraph, Hamas militants are attempting to negotiate a new arms deal with North Korea for missiles and communication equipment that will help them continue their offensive against Israel. It added that security officials say Hamas is now waiting for delivery after it made an initial cash down payment via a Lebanon-based trading company brokering the transaction. The arms deal wouldn't be the first of its kind between the two. In 2009, a freighter carrying 35 tons of North Korean arms was seized in Bangkok, and according to Western sources, it was heading to clients such as Hezbollah and Hamas.
I see. Now, in some other stories of the day, it's been a week and a half since Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was shot out of the sky, but officials are still trying to gain full access to the crash site in eastern Ukraine.
Yes, their progress has been hindered by the pro-Russian rebels blamed for the incident. While the international community is still weighing its options, a military mission appears to be off the table. Shin Se-min reports.
Achieving military superiority through an international mission in this area is, according to our conclusion, not realistic, not even if we have a massive military buildup.
Prime Minister Mark Rutte says the idea of sending international troops to the crash site in rebel-controlled Ukraine is not just unrealistic, but also too risky. While he said all options were on the table, military intervention is apparently not one of them, over fears that the development would only stand to broaden the conflict.
The area is under control of the separatists, consisting of many heavy armed soldiers at a short distance from the Russian border.
They're the same separatists who stand accused of shooting down Flight 17 with nearly 300 people on board. While an earlier deal between Malaysian authorities and the rebels laid the groundwork for an investigation into the disaster, obstructions remain. A team of unarmed Dutch and Australian officers were forced to drop plans to visit the crash site on Sunday due to heavy shelling in the area. More than 200 bodies of the 298 victims in the crash have been recovered. Officials believe the others remain in the plane's wreckage. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And turning now to relatively very much lighter news of the day, dog owners in Hong Kong are in for a treat. A new bus service there will allow man's best friend to catch a ride every Sunday.
That's right. Hong Kong's pet owners now have the opportunity to get out and about with their pooches on a bus in a city which bans animals from most public transport. This began as a Facebook campaign by 3 frustrated pet lovers in 2012 and has since become a regular Sunday affair.
Hong Kong is not a so friendly, dog-friendly city, and most of the Hong Kong transportation do not allow pets to get in. But Hong Kong have many pet lovers, so they have the difficulty to take their pets to go around city, but they do want to. So that's why we want to do the pet bus for 99 bus.
Owners will be able to travel by bus to one of the 18 designated pet-friendly parks across the city. Since its launch, over 1,000 pet owners have taken advantage of the service. But the service's future remains uncertain, as the long-term sponsors needed to help cover the cost of running the regular service. While extra funds will also help the company to add pet-friendly amenities on the bus for added safety.
All right, so good news for now, and thank you so much, Hyunbin, for those stories, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
Hope your week is off to a good start. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather update. Getting straight to the latest at the moment, we are seeing fairly clear skies in the central regions, but the southern regions, including Jeju, are under the influence of a monsoonal front, which is why it is raining down there. Now, through tomorrow, Jeollanam-do province could get up to 40 millimeters, Jeollabuk-do and Gyeongsang-nam-do 5 to 20, and Jeju around 5 millimeters, so an umbrella will come in handy if you are down there. Now, hope you got a chance to grab a bowl of chicken ginseng soup or samgyetang to better deal with the heat. Today is Chungbok here in Korea, which indicates the hottest day of the summer, and it was as daytime highs here in the capital soared to a hot 32 degrees. This scorching hot conditions will continue through tomorrow, so make sure to drink plenty of water and stay cool. On to Tuesday's readings. Seoul jumps to 33 while Daegu and Gwangju hit 32. As for other places, Daejeon and Jeju reach the low 30s, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to 26. That's all the updates I have for you now, but I'll be back with more updates after 10. See you then.
Yes, I will see you then. And that does it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.